There we go. Hopefully the sound is right. Okay. Well, welcome to Codependence and Anger. Thank you, Jocelyn, for putting our CEUs together in our schedule. She's doing a great job. If you have ideas of something you would like to present or something you would like to hear, please let Jocelyn know. I will be doing some of them. Other therapists will be doing some of them, and we may even invite some people in to do some of them. So today we're talking about codependence and anger and the relationship that they have. Here we go. So how would you guys define codependence? I feel like everyone knows what it is, but it's hard to define.
You can't do anything without me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Any other definitions of codependence? Okay. Good. Good.
Say attachment.
Mm-hmm.
Possessiveness.
Mm-hmm.
They can't see your plans.
Mm-hmm.
For time.
Mm-hmm.
And then the person's not able to follow through, sticks with their plans. You don't care about me. You don't love me. I'm not to you.
So I'm going to skip one. What creates codependence? How do people become codependent? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They are not allowed to think what they think, feel what they feel, and what they think is not important. So they cannot trust.
Would there be another part of that where the other person adjusts, the other person it's the need, so it kind of like feeds into itself. Like I wonder if no one in their life acquiesced to their requests, they still be codependent. So I'm just wondering, is it an exit system or truly isolated?
Awesome. That's a great question. So we're a couple definitions. Definitions from Codependence Anonymous. Oh no, this is from a Therapist Guide to Clinical Intervention. When someone becomes so preoccupied with someone else that they neglect themselves. Another addiction, an addiction to taking care of the needs and problems of another person. And so the term codependence came out in the 70s with Alcoholics Anonymous. And therapists were seeing that the person married to the alcoholic was just as ill. And they were trying to figure out what's going on. Usually they're just like, oh, these poor victims, these nice people, they have, addicts as spouses. But then they started seeing patterns. And then they started seeing enabling. And then they started seeing codependence kind of being attracted to addicts. And it kind of fit. Harville Hendricks says we marry to heal childhood wounds. And I 100%, as a marriage therapist who's counseled for a long, long time, I 100% agree with that. There are irrational emotional reasons we choose our spouse. I think there's good reasons, but I think there's also things we're trying to work out in various ways. We can marry our parent or the opposite of our parent, and we kind of work that out in marriage. So what they did is they started seeing how the codependent enabled and in many ways controlled the addict. Even though they felt out of control, they were doing everything they could to control. And from that, in the 90s and 2000s is when codependent became not just the spouse of an addict, it became its own diagnosis. It became its own term. to explain someone who just is kind of, I like the word addicted to taking care of people. They find their identity in others. And so they're mirror people, I guess is a good way to put it. I almost don't exist unless I'm a reflection of what's going on with you. It's also a complete intolerance to anyone else's emotions. You have to be able to calm everyone down. And you need someone to be happy for you to be happy. You can't be happy unless everyone else around you is happy. And so it's a complete opposite of Viktor Frankl, as he teaches in logotherapy, is that we are in charge of our emotions and we are in charge of our attitudes, regardless of what happens. And, obviously he was in Auschwitz and he said, I chose my attitude. Codependent is the exact opposite. It's my entire being is affected by the people I'm around in my environment. And I'm kind of a victim of all of that. And as we'll see, is they're way less of a victim than you realize. And I don't say this, let me make a disclaimer. There are victims in relationships, okay? There always are. And so this is not a victim shaming, okay? There are people that are victims of, their spouse being addicts or abusers, okay? This is not about blaming, but this is about getting better, okay? And so I have all my career counseled a lot of codependents, because that's usually the people that seek counseling. It's usually the codependent that seeks counseling in a marriage, because they're the one that's uncomfortable. They're unhappy with what their spouse is doing. Their spouse is happy. Hey, I'm abusing. Hey, I'm an addict. Hey, I'm doing whatever, right? And the codependent is the one trying to fix everything and then finally just get exhausted and comes into counseling. And so I want to speak incredibly sympathetic to the codependent, because honestly, I've had codependent tendencies all my life. And so, as I'm saying this, I'm not saying any of this without compassion and grace. But I'm saying is they can control their universe. They can change. And there are things they can do to affect their lives. Okay. I've actually seen people change their entire marriages by them just changing. Okay. So I had a client recently come in, and I had worked with her years ago. And when she put up her boundaries, her Asperger's husband, nice guy, acted nicer, right? But then her boundaries started loosening, and he started getting meaner and a little more abusive and a little more neglecting. So she came back in and said, well, let's put our boundaries back up. She put her boundaries back up. Yep. They're back to having a healthy relationship. So I don't want to say that it's her job to fix him, but we teach people how to treat us. And it's okay to say, this is okay to treat me this way, and this is not okay to treat me this way. And often the codependent, unfortunately, communicates, it's okay to treat me this way. And not only is it okay, you reward it. Every time you're mean to me, I'm actually nicer. Every time you're struggling your addiction, I take care of you. It's almost, like if a dog jumps on your table and eats the food and you pet the dog and say, good dog, tomorrow when the dog does the same thing, you're angry that the dog did that. Yet, should you be, right? And so again, we're not blaming the victim. The perpetrator still needs to be changing their behavior, okay? However, oftentimes, and I would say almost always, the codependent needs to change first, because they're the one feeling the pain. And honestly, they're the one that's aware of the system and what's going on. The addict, the abuser, the person that's neglecting kind of is fine with the situation. And they don't even really know it's that bad. And though the codependent is like, I've told him 1,000,000 times. Your words and your actions are two different things. And so oftentimes when people come in for marriage counseling, and I'll do one-on-one, is the nice one, the codependent one, needs to change first. It's not right in many ways. It doesn't feel just, but it's reality, because the other one's not going to change until the codependent does. And I know that puts so much weight on the person who's trying so hard. But we're going to also find out is that there's also an equal dysfunction. I truly believe that dysfunction marries dysfunction. You marry a different dysfunction, but about the same level of dysfunction. Okay. So I've also seen a very high correlation with narcissists and codependents marrying. They find each other. There could be 100 people in a room. The narcissist will find the codependent, and the codependent will find the narcissist. It's like the narcissist can smell the blood. like a shark, and they just come in and they find that person who's going to put up with their junk. And then there's the symbiosis that's unhealthy, but it's a cycle. And unfortunately continues to perpetuate itself. So Codependence Anonymous, it says for self-evaluation, and so this is kind of their test, right? You know, we send out the GAD, we send out all these things. This is their test. They said for self-evaluation, we offered a list of common attitudes and behaviors, patterns that CODA members, Codependence Anonymous, have observed in our lives. And these are the 5 most common according to them is denial, low self-esteem, compliance, control, which is funny because those are almost the opposite, right? And avoidance. And we'll send these slides out, and I don't want to go through all of them because there's a whole bunch of characteristics, and I have 3 hours of stuff I'm trying to put into 1 hour. But often it's a difficulty identifying what they feel. They can take care of themselves without any help from others. So they rarely ask for help, but help everyone. And so one of my tests to figure out if someone's a codependent, I go, so who in your life helps you? What do you do when you have something that you could do yourself? Do you ask for help? And usually the answer, if it's a codependent, is no, they do it themselves. However, they're very quick to volunteer to help everyone else. Unfortunately, many of you in this room may struggle somewhat with codependence because codependents become therapists. Because we get to help other people and they don't have to know anything about us or help us. It's the perfect job for the codependent. We get to rescue and save and help, and they can't do anything to help us. And so a lot of codependents are attracted to this industry. Low self-esteem, they judge themselves harshly. They have very negative self-talk. Extremely loyal and remain in harmful situations too long. This is the problem, is why they stick with the victim. And we know, you know, the abuse cycle, you know, finally and we'll go through the triangle in a minute, but finally the codependent has it. They lose their mind, they scream, they yell, they're like, I'm done. And then the abuser or the addict goes, oh, I'll change, right? And then honeymoon phase. And that lasts a day or 2 or 5 or however long until the codependent's appeased and put back in their place and back in their role. And then they go back to what they were doing. And then the codependent thinks, oh, wow, if they could just be that person all the time. And it's a misunderstanding of their spouse. They are way too optimistic about who their spouse is because everyone thinks that everyone thinks like them. Every human thinks that every human thinks like you, and every human is wrong. Obviously, no one thinks like you because no one behaves like you. Everyone acts differently. Everyone thinks differently. Because the codependent thinks, wow, if I'm just nicer, they'll be nice back because that would work with them. If you're nice to a codependent, they'll be nice back. They feel obligated. The abuser and the addict doesn't feel obligated. They're like, oh, thanks for being nice. And that's it. And the codependent's like, wait, I was nice to you. You need to be nice to me. And that's where the problems happen. They believe most people are incapable of taking care of themselves. However, they think they're incredibly capable of taking care of themselves. So it's like there's a pride there. And I've had to deal with my codependent clients and going, there is actually a pride here that you need to acknowledge, that you think you can do everything yourself and you think no one else can. That's pride. Thinking you don't need help. So what's the missing pattern? So they named 5 things in there. The missing pattern is anger. Honestly, I see a ton of codependents that are just fed up, angry, sick, passive aggressive, are just mad at the world because they're taking care of everyone and no one's taking care of them. Yet if anyone asks to help take care of them, they'll say no. So the 2 greatest examples of this from scripture is Martha in Luke 10. I forgot my Bible, so I'm just going to use this. These are 2 of the greatest examples of codependence. As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, Lord, Don't you care that my sister has left me to do all the work myself? Tell her to help me. That is the most codependent thing I've ever heard. Martha, Martha, the Lord answered, you're worried and upset about many things, but few are needed, and indeed only one. Mary has chosen what's better, and it will not be taken from her. And honestly, I don't think Jesus is harshly rebuking her. I think he is speaking care to her, going, you're distracted by the wrong thing. You're trying to be the savior. You're trying to get everything done when there's a savior in front of you. And often that's the sign of codependence, is an anger when people don't help them, though they don't ask. Notice she didn't ask Mary. She asked Jesus. That's a passive-aggressive way to ask for help. And she's just fed up, right? And then the older brother in Luke 15, the parable. Honestly, I think it's of the two lost sons, because both are very lost. And the second one is actually worse. And so, meanwhile, the older son was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard the music and dancing. So he called the servant and asked him what was going on. Your brother has come home, he replied. Your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound. The older brother became angry. There it is. Refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered the father, look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your order. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, who has squandered your property with prostitutes, comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him. Do you see the anger? And so what happens is codependents make deals in their head. Okay. Martha's like, if I'm working, everyone else should be working. And the older son, the lost son, goes, well, if I'm doing all this for my dad, I should be getting a goat. I should be getting a party. So is that really unconditional love? Is that really giving? No, it's not giving. It's giving to get. It's a manipulation. It's a deal. And as I often tell my clients, you are literally making a deal or a contract without the other person even knowing you're making it. How fair is that? So the older son said, hey, I'm making a contract. If I obey, dad's going to do this, this, and this, and this. However, dad doesn't know the deal, never signed the deal, never agreed to the deal. And he's angry that his dad's not doing this deal that the dad knows nothing about. And that's the language I use with the codependents. I go, you are making deals with people that they don't know, nor have they agreed to. How fair is that? That's selfish. So codependence can be a fuel for anger, rage. I think, honestly, as I've counseled anger over the years and raging, the one thing I've found with almost all the ragers is they're often codependent. Is because they stuff, explode. And often I see a lot of my addict clients are also codependent. Is they're trying to do all these things. So that's the funny part, is they're an addict, so they're married to a codependent, but they're codependent themselves back to their spouse. And so they're doing all these things for their spouse, and their spouse doesn't do anything back because they never ask for help. They just assume they're supposed to care and love. And then they get passive aggressive and they get mad. And honestly, I think the number one reason why men go to pornography is a passive aggressive way to get back at their spouse. And almost every guy or woman that I've counseled that has cheated, it seems to be a passive aggressive way to get back at their spouse. Their spouse doesn't know, but yet I'm kind of sticking my middle finger up at them when their back's turned. And so it's a way to get mad, a way to get even, a way to get what your needs met. But yet again, these deals are all happening. And no, I'm not telling anyone. I haven't asked my spouse to do this, that, or the other thing, or to care for me. And depression and anxiety. So codependence is related very much to anxiety, because I need everyone to be okay for me to be okay. Well, how much anxiety does that take? Oh my gosh, I have to make everyone in this room okay. Wow, well, guess what? You can't. So it's impossible. So you're going to be constantly anxious that someone's going to be upset with you. Someone's going to be unhappy with you. Guess what? People are going to be unhappy with. People are unhappy with Jesus all the time, and he was perfect. If people are never unhappy with you, you're probably doing something wrong, actually. At parenting, I always joke, if your kids are always happy with you, you're probably not doing it right. There should be times they're upset. There should be times your spouse is upset, because there should be healthy conflict. So a lot of you may have seen the drama triangle. Okay. And so what this is a cycle that a couple will go through, or anyone, could be parent kid, could be a relationship. So the codependent starts as the rescuer. Okay. So they start and they go, let me help you. I'll do that. Let's not fight. I feel bad. You'll be fine. The problem is they eventually get exhausted from rescuing and also feel they're owed because of the rescuing, like Martha and the older son, right? Martha's mad at Mary because I've been rescuing this whole time. Why aren't you helping me? So then she gets to persecute her. So Martha went from rescuer to persecutor. It's your fault. Jesus, tell my sister to help me. Right? And then what happens? Martha then becomes the victim. Poor me. My sister's not helping me. And I'm sure she's in the kitchen going, oh my God, my sister, always lazy, always just talking to Jesus. Here I am doing all the work myself. Now I'm the victim. So she started as rescuer, which no one asked her to do. She then persecuted and then became the victim. And then they go back to rescuer once they've kind of gotten their victimhood out. And I would also say with the codependent, just like fight, flight, freeze, fawn, it's almost fight, flight, freeze, fawn, victim. It's a way to self-protect. Because if I'm a victim, then you can't attack me. Because no one should attack a victim. And so in some ways, it's a way of self-protection. So this is actually something I made years ago, as I've counseled codependents and personality disorders, and often they were married to each other, unfortunately. And I actually think that there's an incredible similarity, yet difference, between codependence and personality disorders. And so up, down is health and attachment. Okay. Right, left. So in the middle is you value yourself. Okay. And others. So on the left is others are more important and I have to value just them. Far right is I'm most important and I should be taken care of and I value me. So the narcissist or the borderline's far right. Codependent is far left. But you notice in the bottom is they both need to manipulate to feel love. The narcissist doesn't think they'll be loved. They think they should be, but they're constantly trying to get people to love them by declaring how great they are. Or, the borderline honestly becomes the victim and then tries to get loved. The histrionic, right? But the codependent does a very similar thing. But the sick thing is the codependent kind of knows what they're doing and the personality disorder person doesn't. And that's kind of the sick part, is they're trying to manipulate because they don't feel value. They don't feel they're valuable enough for people to love them. So they have to try and get people to love them. And I ask the question, what causes codependence? And often it's a lack of attachment. Notice we have healthy attachment. It's they weren't valued as a child. So it could be a huge neglect issue. It could be an abuse issue. Every abuse victim, when they first come out, feel they have no value because they were treated with no value. And every child thinks they're the center of the universe, and they don't actually think, well, I'm being abused because that person's bad. They think I'm being abused because I'm bad. Obviously, that's the only conclusion for a child because they're self-centered. And it's not bad to be self-centered. All children are self-centered because that's how their universe is. But if you're abused, you think there must be something wrong with me. That's why I'm being abused. And then you think you have no value. And if you have no value, your job is to take care of everyone, not to be taken care of. And I often use the metaphor, here you go, Chris, of rats and seals. And so no one cares if you kill a rat. Well, most people don't. Peter would lose their mind. But most people are happy, right, if you kill a mouse or a rat that's in a house. Why? Because a mouse or a rat has no perceived value. A baby seal, the cute little white ones up in Canada, right? Kill one of those, everyone loses their mind. Okay, why? Because they have more perceived value. Now, this isn't a message of whether you should kill baby seals. Because if you actually go up there, the fishermen hate the baby seals because the baby seals eat all the fish. Okay, so for them, they're rats. But the amount of anger is in complete proportion to value. I'm angry if you kill something valuable. I'm not angry if you kill something unvaluable. So if I don't think I'm valuable, I'm not going to be angry if you treat me without value. And so there's another sign of codependence is they're treated terribly and are okay with it. A healthy person is like, wait a second, I have value. I should not be treated this way. Stop. No. And so a personality disorder will meet someone with healthy attachment and go, oh, I'm not marrying them, because they don't agree that it's all about me. So the codependent and the narcissist or the borderline or histrionic get together and they both agree it's about that person. The codependent wants to take care of them and they want to be taken care of. And it could be female or male. I mean, I don't think there's any more PD female or male. It could be the male codependent or the female codependent and the borderline narcissist. And so for a marriage, you have to have agreement of beliefs. And in an unhealthy marriage, there's an agreement that it's your job to take care of it. Unfortunately, occasionally, then they become, the victim and they're mad because, oh, I do all these things for you. And they kind of explode for a short period. Then, the personality disorder kind of draws them in again, abuse cycle. And then they go back to their place of rescuer. So does this make sense? So the healthy ideal is I value people and I value myself. That's what a healthy person does. And that's what Jesus did. He often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. Yet he was out in healing. He valued people. He valued himself. After John the Baptist was killed, he went out on the lake on the boat by himself just to mourn. He valued himself. He took care of himself. And that's what we need as therapists and as codependents. Self-care. Codependents are terrible at self-care, and they need to grow in self-care. And so the healthy ideal, again, is if I have compassion for others, which the PD doesn't, and if I have boundaries, which the codependent doesn't, then and if I value myself and value others, that's the healthy ideal. And that's where attachment can happen. Dr. Henry Cloud, who wrote Boundaries, if we feel responsible for other people's feelings, we can no longer make decisions based on what is right. We will make decisions based on how others feel about our choices. Jesus said, woe to you when men speak well of you, when all men speak well of you. If we're always trying to keep everyone happy, then we cannot make the choices required to live correctly and freely. And if you're always worried about making everyone happy and everything is copacetic, we're not going to act right. And as therapists, if we're always worried about our client being happy, we sometimes don't let them mourn. We don't let them be angry. Sometimes if we as codependents as therapists, if we're uncomfortable with them getting angry, they're angry, we go, oh, you shouldn't be angry. Or, oh, you shouldn't mourn. We need to let them have those feelings. I think one of the greatest things that therapists can do is be comfortable with your client being uncomfortable. And that's what a codependent can't do. They can't be comfortable with someone being uncomfortable. And so you don't sit and just immediately say, calm down, or it's okay. Or you go, yeah, that sucks. Let's sit with that. Let's be uncomfortable together. That's how to love someone. So the codependent's beliefs. So here we go, CBT. You need to change beliefs to be able to change your emotions and behaviors. They don't think they're good enough. They think there's something innately wrong with them. And that happened from a childhood wound. Either they were forced to be parents, they were neglected, they were abused. I mean, something bad happened. You don't just become a codependent. They're motivated by fear or shame. They feel they need to earn love. And this is the biggest struggle. And that's why they will often get together with someone who doesn't really love them. I've heard the story 100 times. They're like, you know what? I would date someone and they'd fall in love with me and they really liked me. And I broke up with them because it felt weird. Then I met this person, I started dating them, and they weren't really all that impressed with me. And so I kept dating them because it's congruent. Humans go back to what's familiar, not to what's good. We don't go to healthy, we go to familiar until we do counseling and get better, and then we become healthier. But so that to be loved is unfamiliar and weird for the codependent. That's scary. And in some ways, they want to almost have a parent-child relationship with their spouse because it's a fear of intimacy, a fear of vulnerability. If I marry someone who's just immature or an addict or a PD, I can take care of them, and then they're not my equal. Because when you have an equal, you have to be vulnerable. You have to be honest. You have to show need. They're scared to death of that. And so they marry someone down here who they take care of. And then they become resentful of taking care of them. Because it feels safer. Because again, we go back to what's familiar, not to what's good. They feel they need to save everyone, savior complex. I need to just rescue everyone. They're worried about everyone's feelings. And what if someone is unhappy with me? It's like world ends. They manage others to manage their own emotions. And that's so part of what I'm talking about codependence is that you need him to be happy for you to be happy. I go, but that's a lot of work. And that puts a lot of pressure on that other person. What if you just chose to be happy? And that's why I love Viktor Frankl in this. Logotherapy. Just stop focusing on everyone else. Focus on yourself and your choice and your behaviors. Often passive aggressive. Like Martha, was being passive aggressive. They try and earn love. They have poor boundaries. Boundaries are one of the most important things for them to do. People pleasers. They expect mind reading. That's the thing. And that's why they become victims, is they make these deals. They think you should just know they need X. But they don't. And so oftentimes, I've done so I had a husband who was codependent. And I said, I want you to go home and sit on the couch and ask for a glass of water. And that literally freaked him out. He's like, what? I said, I want you to just ask for a glass of water, but I can get up and get it myself. I'm like, exactly. I want you to ask for something you could do yourself. And he's like, why? I go, because it's not codependent. We need to learn that you have value. We need to learn you can ask for something when you can do it yourself. I go, your spouse actually wants to love you. And you are being selfish. That shocks codependent because they think they're the most selfless person in the world, right? And so whenever I start using the language, you're being selfish, that motivates the codependent. Oh, I don't want to be selfish. So they all of a sudden now they want to change. So years ago, I had a friend who was unemployed. And so we'd go to breakfast or lunch and I was just trying to encourage him. And it was like the 6th, 7th, 8th, I don't remember. And I paid it every time because I was like, they were unemployed. I'm not, right? And he looks at me and he goes, can I pay the bill? I'm like, no, dude, you're unemployed. I got it. Let me take care of it. He goes, you're being selfish. I was like, what? All of a sudden, I'm like angry. What do you mean I'm being selfish? I'm paying for your lunch. He said the most profound thing I'd ever heard. He goes, which would you rather have? The $50 or the good feeling of blessing me? He goes, you're being selfish with the blessing. You are being selfish with keeping all the blessing of serving to yourself. You want to serve everyone and enjoy that blessing. And in some ways, it's hedonistic. It feels good to help people. But yet you are robbing people of the joy of serving you. And I tell that story often to my codependent clients. And it's just, you are robbing people of the opportunity. So go ask your wife for a glass of water. And then we start asking for more and more and more and more things. To find healthy relationships. And often the spouse of the codependent is elated that they're finally asking for what they need because they don't know. They're a mystery. Yeah, as I talked about before, fight, freeze, fawn, as well as then victim. They'll either go to fawn and make you happy, or they go to victim so that they're protected. So we want to teach them the direct relationship between anger and disappointment and codependency. And so Luke 10 to 15, those are the ones that I just read. is that codependents have high expectations of people because they have high expectations of themselves. And again, we think everyone thinks like us, and they again make this deal. They have a savior complex. They have control, and then they're shocked at the word control. I don't try and control. Like, you're trying to control your entire environment. You're constantly trying to control your spouse by, appeasing, by doing, by, going, oh, I'll just stuff it, right? Every time they get angry at their spouse, they just stuff it, stuff. And then it either comes out in like raging, addictions, anxiety, depression. It comes out. And, as I tell my clients, I'm like, you keep stuffing things in a box, eventually it's coming out. It might seep out in anxiety, it might seep out in addiction, or it might explode into rage. I go, but your box is going to empty. One way or another. You keep stuffing everything in that box, it's coming out. Or you could open the box and take one thing out at a time and use I statements and to use assertive communication and value yourself enough to say, honey, that really hurt my feelings. I'd prefer you not do that. Which sounds incredibly shocking to a codependent. They're exhausted from taking care of the world and therefore have resentment. Again, Martha. I do everything for everyone else. But again, they're making these unknown deals. So here's something I use with clients all the time, the difference between nice and kind. So part of why there's so many codependents is America's codependent. We are a codependent nation. We teach people to be nice. I can't tell you how many times I heard my mom say growing up, oh, Grant, be nice, right? We're supposed to be nice. And we think nice is good, right? Nice guys, nice gals, be nice. Nice is terrible. Nice is a 4-letter word. Nice will ruin your life. Instead, we need to be kind. Jesus wasn't nice. I mean, honestly, I'm still wrestling with the verse when the I don't think she was Samaritan, but she wasn't a Jew. She came to Jesus and you would heal my daughter. And he's like, well, I'm not going to throw the kids' food to the dogs. I was like, I still can't wrap my head around that. He said that. That wasn't nice. He called her a dog. That wasn't nice. But yet Jesus was without sin. He was strong and kind. Jesus was strong and kind. And he did heal her. But Jesus had his priorities, and he was first going to Israel, and that was what he was doing. That was his lane. That was his priority. And we get offended when we see God not being nice. But God isn't nice. God is loving, but God is just. If someone killed my wife, and the police came to the door and said, hey, we caught the killer, but we want to be nice, so we're going to let him go. I wouldn't think that's nice. And that's what we struggle with God with God's wrath or God's anger or hell. We're like, God should be nice. Until you realize nice isn't just. God is a just God, and that's why he punishes sin. And praise God, because of his grace, pours it on Jesus if we receive him as our Savior. And then praise God, his wrath goes there. But his wrath needs to go somewhere because justice needs to happen. Because without justice, you're codependent. Without justice, God is just a toothless line who just is a nice grandpa that lets you do anything and is just happy with you. But when something happens to you, you don't want that toothless grandfather. Someone killed my wife, I would not want the police to just let him go to be nice. That dude needs to be, well, I'd like to be in a room with him, but he needs to be in prison, minimally, right? And so nice is quid pro quo, right? Which is Latin is something for something. So there's always a catch when the codependent is nice. I'm going to be nice to you, but you're going to owe me. Even just if it's thanks. Or if it's this or it's that. I love, Jesus said, do your giving when no one can see it. Don't let your left know what your right's doing, because then your heart is right. The Pharisees were nice. They were giving, but they were announcing it. And so they wanted praise for their giving. So there's an ulterior motive. So nice versus kind is all about motive. You could see the two people doing the exact same behaviors, but the motive is different. So nice is quid pro quo, kind is altruistic. And how do I know if I'm altruistic? Is that if I do something for you and you don't say thanks and you don't do anything else, I'm okay with it. Okay, well, I didn't do it for thanks. I didn't do it for you to give me something. I did it to be kind. So I'm okay. But if I give you something and you don't say thanks, you don't do something back, you don't be nice, that was manipulative and that was nice. Nice is flattering. You know, honestly, in Proverbs, multiple times it says not to have flattering lips. We're flattering because we want people to like us. We're saying, hey, that's a great shirt. And you're hoping that they say, hey, that's a great shirt too. You're looking for quid pro quo. Whereas kind is just encouraging regardless of whether you get something back from the person or not. Nice is worried about their appearance, how they look. Oh my gosh, am I going to look okay if I blah, blah, blah? Is it going to look good if I... Where kind is just cares about the heart. Doing what's right regardless of what people think. Nice has expectations. There's always an expectation. And an expectation is what? It's a premeditated resentment. I'll say that again. Expectations are premeditated resentments. Now, it's okay if you verbalize an expectation, but then again, you can't expect they're going to agree. But I would say unspoken expectations are premeditated resentments because you're just like, if you don't do this, I'm going to be mad. You know, and again, not to go on my speech again, but why I'm not a huge fan of secular humanism. I mean, there's lots of good parts about it, but to think that people are naturally good is disappointing. They're not. I raised toddlers. And Zach is the nicest. Anyone who knows Zach, you will know he is the nicest kid you could ever meet. He was selfish as a 3-year-old. He's still selfish. I mean, but he's a sweet kid. But a 3-year-old, I had to teach him to obey. I had to teach him respect. I had to teach him to share. I didn't have to teach him to scream no. I didn't have to teach him to go mine. I didn't have to teach him to run around naked in our house when we had guests because he ran faster when he was naked. He would always, I run faster when I'm naked. I'm like, oh, praise God. He only did it when we had guests. And so expectations, we have to be careful of our expectations, and especially with our codependent clients. I'm like, let's look at what your expectations are. And if you ask them, they'll initially say, oh, I have no expectation. I'm like, oh, so not true. Let's look at it. Kind is being happy to do it. Is secretly, I want my codependent to secretly do nice things for people. Or kind things for people. Nice is, oh, I'll just let it go. I'll forgive. I just let it go. Oh, it's no big deal, right? It's fine. It's no big deal. Kind truly forgives. And often this is hard because we have a wrong definition of forgiving. We think if we forgive, we won't feel hurt. That's not true. We think if we forgive, then it was okay. That's not true. Because you can't forgive something that's okay. You can only forgive something that's wrong. People are like, well, I don't want to forgive them because then I'm saying it's okay. I'm like, well, no, it's the opposite. Forgiving means something happened wrong and I'm forgiving. You can't forgive something that's okay. It's impossible. Nice makes promises. Oh, I see this in marriage all the time. I promise. Oh my gosh. Oh, I know I did this, but I promise I will do the dishes every time, or I'll never be home late. I'll never. Promising is about appeasing in the moment. I'm in trouble. So I'm going to promise you that I will never do that again. The addict does it. The codependent does it. Oh my gosh. And I tell people in marriage as I'm working individually with them, I don't want you to tell your spouse you're working on this. Just do it. Because what's the advantage of promising? There's no advantage. Honestly, what you're doing is you're setting up an expectation. Best case scenario, you fulfill it. Worst case scenario, you break it. There's no real pro. There's a lot of con because you might not be able to do it. And in James, it says, don't say, you should say God's will. You don't know what you're going to do tomorrow. You could die tomorrow. All you know, don't promise. Just be a man or woman of your word. Nice feels they need to earn love. Kind understands they give and receive unconditional love. And that's what I try and work on. And often the nice person is the martyr. They're doing everything like Martha. The kind person has boundaries. The kind person says no. I don't have time for that. I'm sorry, I can't do that. That's what the kind person does. Instead of becoming a martyr, they say, no, I can't do that. Sorry. And it's healthy. So this will be in the PowerPoint if you guys want to look this up, just Jesus not being nice from Matthew. It's kind of a funny thing from a former pastor. So being codependent is about having a healthy worldview is how we heal. Whenever we feel pressured by someone to do something, it's our problem and not the problem of the person putting on the pressure. See, the codependent thinks if you ask them to do something, they have to do it. And so they get mad that they're asked to do something. Like, I can't believe he asked me to do that. I'm like, why? It's okay to ask a question. You can always ask a question. You could say no. So the codependent, because they can't say no, are mad when people have expectations of them or ask them to do something because they want you to manage you and not ask you. Because then I don't have to feel uncomfortable saying no. And so more assignments I do is I want you to say no to something this week. Something you could do. I want you to say no to your boss, your spouse, your kids. I want you to say no to something. Just for fun. Let's say no. Just to practice. And people aren't going to die. And they're not going to lose their mind, and it's okay. So for them to be able to heal, they need to own their behaviors and their emotions. They need to stop saying, this person made me mad. No one can make you mad. They can make it more likely. They can't make you mad. Client needs to stop blaming, stop being a martyr. And as I talked about logotherapy, choosing their attitude. Reframing. Here we go. Creating deals the person didn't agree to, boundaries for self, respecting other people's boundaries. Respecting yourself and realizing that codependence is actual pride. Is I can take care of everyone, no one can take care of me. The selfishness of blessing others and the savior complex is we need to get over that. There is a savior. You're not him. And he appreciates, help, but he doesn't need you. He's good. He's got the whole world in his hands. The world will go on without you. Your church will go on without you. Your family will go on without you. Everyone will live without you. So practical tools. Allowing people to own their own boundaries. Speaking the truth, not managing emotions. Being strong and kind. Not letting people down easy. This is a hard one. You often hear, when someone's dating, oh, I just want to let them down easy. That's selfish. That's not actually about you trying to be nice and let them down easy. You don't want them to be mad at you. You don't want to feel bad for being a bad person. You don't want to feel bad for hurting their feelings. So you let them down easy. It's actually not about them. That's about you. So you don't feel so bad. You don't feel guilty. You don't feel hurt when they're hurt. Just be honest. Proverbs 27:5-6 is wounds from a friend can be trusted, but an enemy multiplies kisses. And so if we're not codependent and we're loving, we will tell someone, look, you have broccoli in your teeth. Look, I've observed this behavior in you, and I think it's unhealthy, and I would like to help you with. Do you realize you're doing it? Codependent would never ask that because that would be risking them be unhappy with you, right? Jesus had no problem. He actually called Peter Satan at one time. He said, get behind me, Satan. Jesus had no problem confronting people in love. He was the most loving person and he confronted. So what does that mean? Love confronts. Love speaks up. Love has boundaries. It's not selfish. Pursue healthy, equal relationships. I remember in my master's degree many moons ago, our teacher said, all of you are going to have to lose half your friends. And we're all shocked. She goes, because you're all codependent, you're all saviors, and you're the counselor for all your friends. I go, you can't, she goes, you can't do that and counsel people. You don't have enough in your bucket. So you're going to have to lose half of your leech friends who you just take care of so that you can help your clients. Otherwise, you'll have nothing left. You need equal relationships where they bless you, you bless them. And obviously, there's times you take care of a friend or a friend takes care of you, but you need equal, healthy relationships. not just your spouse, but the same gender. I have 3 guys that I'm just best friends with, and we minister to each other, we speak truth to each other, we encourage each other, we keep each other accountable. And when we need something, because we're all kind of codependent, we call each other and say, hey, I need prayer, or hey, I need this. Is you need equal relationships, healthy equal relationships, because the codependent is up here as a parent because they're scared, remember? They're scared to death of this. And so they're taking care of all these people because they don't want to really be known. Because they don't think if they're known, they won't be loved, because they think there's something wrong with them. So that's where you need to work on the value issue, the self-esteem issue. Allow people to serve you. I think I talked about, asking for something you can do yourself, as well as codependents are terrible at taking compliments. So I have a rule in my office. If I give you a compliment, you're only allowed to say thank and you. You're not allowed to say anything else. And I will correct you very quickly, interrupt you if you try. And so I'll go, wow, you're really growing in that. Yeah, but I'm like, no, say thank you. Receive the compliment. First of all, you're disrespecting the person giving it because you're saying they're lying or you're wrong. And I'm like, you're disrespecting my compliment. And oh, I'm sorry, because all of a sudden then now I'm upset, right? I'm not upset. I go, but you're disrespecting my compliment. You're saying that I'm wrong. I go, I actually am a really good judge of character. My job. So if I give you the compliment, it's sincere. You don't have to minimize it. I go, but here's the other thing, and this is third person. I do a lot of inner child work. I go, so you're sitting in the chair. Imagine 5-year-old you is sitting next to you. And so what I'm doing is I'm complimenting 5-year-old you. And then you're looking at 5-year-old you, go, don't listen to him. You're not. You suck. Don't listen to him. You're terrible. I go, can you imagine saying that to a 5-year-old? People are, oh my gosh, I would never do that. I go, but that's what you're doing to your 5-year-old self. Every time I compliment you, you're just saying, that's wrong. I go, receive the compliment and say thank you. And let your little child grow and get healthy. And what you need to then start speaking life into your inner child. Because often codependents didn't have good parents that nurtured them. So now you need to nurture your inner child. You need to love your inner child. You need to speak life. I think it's Paul Tripp says that no one speaks to you more than you. You're the greatest influence in your life. So if your thoughts are negative, how are you going to feel about yourself? And codependents have awful self-talk. And so, we know how to deal with self-talk by refuting cognitive distortions in CBT. Only saying thank you to compliments, learning assertive communication, writing down on unspoken expectations and learning that. Self-care value, Luke 15:6 is when I said, Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. Self-soothing kit, I have one in my office if you want to see it. It just has a whole bunch of different things that does 5 senses. It's for anxiety. I have like a lotion. I have those like balls that you put in your hand and they ding. They have the bells in them. I forget what they are. I have some things that smell. I have like 2 very unique gums, ginger and fennel, because I want it to be a unique flavor, right? And so that's kind of my distress. We want the codependent to learn distress tolerance, because that's often what causes the codependence. I'm stressed about you being stressed, so I need to calm you down. No, you need to be okay. Recognize and refuting black and white thinking, empty chair, often is just dealing with their childhood wounds. Oh, sweet. 10:55. Questions? I got through that faster than I thought. Questions or comments?
So if you're going to use caring confrontation to address codependence with client for the first time, how might you open that door a little bit?
Good question. So I do you know what? I would almost make their story third person and ask their opinion of that person. Because no one sees themselves rationally, but everyone sees everyone else rationally. And I said, if I were to, or if a friend of yours, let's say a friend of yours did blah, 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 and I literally just tell the exact story they just told. What would you tell your friend? And usually the truth comes out, because we can see the truth in third person. We can't see the truth about ourselves. And so it depends on how fragile they are. I have a very humorous yet confronting style that I can get away with. Sometimes you have to be more subtle, and sometimes you can ask, have you ever thought of that you might have some codependence? I think it's okay to ask that. I mean, it depends on where the client is, but you can just start asking, the symptoms of codependence. Do you ever find yourself being really resentful at people that don't help you? Do you have anyone in your life that helps you? Do you call people when you need help? How well do you take compliments? I would even maybe ask about 5 of the symptoms, and they're, as they answer, to the positive, go, well, this is what it sounds like. So I had a client, he was a surgeon at CDH, and he came in and he was this big, powerful dude there, but he went home and he was incredibly codependent. And I was like, he came in all like, I've had 5 therapists. I don't know what you're going to do. Blah, 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 blah. Therapists don't know what they're doing. And I'm like, okay. I think I had only been a therapist 5 years at that point. And so I listened to his story for like 20 minutes and I felt like he needed a magic trick because like he didn't believe in counseling. So I said, can I finish your story for you? And I'm like, okay. And then I started explaining codependence, and I explaining that he just gives into his wife, and that's why he's resentful and angry. And then he goes, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you figured that out." In my brain, I'm like, I can't believe you didn't figure that out. I'm like, that was the easiest diagnosis I've ever seen. And how did the other 4 not? I think oftentimes because therapists are codependent, they almost don't see codependence because they think it's normal. And so I've had my own journey. I see my therapist. I work on my codependence. I work on managing other people and learning to ask for help and learning to take compliments and learning not to do, I practice all of this because I struggle with it. Just a warning, it's 10:58 if you have an 11 o'clock client. However, I'm more than happy to stay here and answer questions.
Do you accept follow-up questions?
Sure. Well, of course, yeah, absolutely. Either find me in my office or email me. So this will be available eventually on YouTube, and we'll send a link. So I guess I can hit stop.